Howdy y'all, I'm Anna with Always Right, and welcome to my November NaNoWriMo themed AuthorTube video. For the month of November, I am posting nano writing vlogs on Tuesdays and Sundays, and then nano themed AuthorTube videos on Fridays. So with that out of the way, let's get into today's video. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Act 2. So if you are staying true to NaNoWriMo this year, and you're doing your 1,667 words a day, by the time this video is posted on the 13th of November, you should be at around like 21,000 words. It's spoilers, you should also be at the point where you're going into Act 2 of your book. So this point of the book is one of the most common points when authors, when writers will put down their book and go, check please, I don't want to write anymore on this book, and then they just leave it alone and it usually dies. I was one of those last November, and I don't want you to be one of those this November. So I'm going to give you some pointers, some tips on writing Act 2, how to approach Act 2. There are quite a few other author tubers on this platform that have gone more in depth on Act 2, as well as kind of like the 3-act structure of books, as well as a book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which I highly suggest you get and you look at least for like an hour before you continue on your way. But anyway, let's talk about Act 2. So basically, Act 2 is the setting, it's the time, it's the place in your world where your main character's pre-existing world that you set up in your first few chapters gets thrown on its head. For example, in 50 Shades of Grey, yes, I feel icky just mentioning that book, but in 50 Shades of Grey, it follows Anastasia Steele as she is like in college, you know, she's helping her roommate out, that's her life, she's just one of those college students, relatable. And then enter Christian Grey, and then Act 2 is basically Christian Grey pursuing her, if you will, inviting her into his world, showing her his world. Another example is the Hunger Games. Katniss Everdeen starts out in District 12, where it's just the little coal miners, that's all they have going for themselves, but she's a hunter, she's providing for her family, all this stuff, but it's established in a world where there is great hunger, there's great disease, and there's great misfortune all around her. And then going into Act 2, she is taken to the capital and she is exposed to grandeur as well as abundance. Another example is Rebecca. In Rebecca, the book as well as the movie, it starts out with a young woman who is essentially like a lady's companion. So she follows this rich lady around and she goes to meals with her and she schedules stuff for her, like a secretary, but like more social. And she meets Max and they fall in love and she gets carted off to his fancy house where she is now the lady of this grand house. So in the beginning, she was literally just like a lady's companion. She was treated like trash at hotels and restaurants, and she's transported into a world where she is the lady of this grand centuries upon centuries old house and married to this amazingly hot guy. In the Hunger Games, it starts out with Katniss being surrounded by poverty and just misfortune, and it takes her to a land that is filled with grandeur, it's filled with abundance. 50 Shades of Grey, Anna Steele is taken from her college life where she's just gonna work at a publishing house and that's just how life is gonna be for her and that's what she wants, to, oh no, I'm kind of like a BDSM sex doll to this man. It's really what it is. Those are some examples that came to mind that are pretty easily accessible to you as a reader or as a movie watcher. So now that you kind of understand what's expected and what's common for Act 2, let's talk about some story elements to add in there, to spice in. One major thing to keep in mind for your Act 2 is your B plot. This is your subplot, and this is most often the romantic subplot. And with this new introduction of a subplot, you need to introduce your B-plot character or your B-plot characters. For example, in the Hunger Games, we are officially introduced and we get to see the beautiful man that is Peeta Mellark. Yes, Peeta is mentioned briefly in Act 1 of The Hunger Games. However, with Act 1, he's kind of glazed over and then he is reintroduced to us in Act 2 when she is going into the opulent world. So another example of a B-plot character being introduced is Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca. She's a real hoot. She's not a romantic interest in that movie, but she does have her own little plot going on, and she helps move the other main plot forward a little bit. Now, I mentioned that your B-plot character does not have to be a person. Your B-plot character can be multiple characters. This is a new world. This is your time to start introducing new characters. You usually want to introduce most of your characters before your midpoint turn. And while you're exploring, you're introducing all these new characters, maybe some subplots, be sure to start increasing the stakes as you go along. Building the stakes in the first half of Act 2 adds so much potential, so much payoff into the second half of your book. Now is time to start building that tension a little at a time. You don't want to be like, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, one chapter before midpoint turn, midpoint turn, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. You want to make sure that you are slowly kind of adding in some things that make you go, oh, make your reader go, oh yeah. You never want your reader to completely forget about the main plot of your story. So those are the story elements to keep in mind when you're writing your second act. Now, if you're looking at me and you've made it this far in the video and you're just like, well, shit, I don't know, what I could do for an opposite world. The first half of Act 2 is often referred to the fun and games section of your book. For example, in Rebecca, it was the new wife moving into that mansion and finding traces of Rebecca everywhere, and building up in her mind that this is Rebecca's house, this is Rebecca's husband, this is Rebecca's staff, this is Rebecca's world that I'm trying to find a place in. Another example is The Hunger Games. The title of the book is The Hunger Games. The premise of the book is Katniss Everdeen volunteers to participate in the Hunger Games in the place of her sister. And so Suzanne Collins builds upon that premise by introducing you to the Capitol, introducing you to the crazy splendor of the Capitol, as well as kind of the grotesque aspects of the Capitol. Because everyone in the Capitol knows that 23 of those kids are going to die every single year, but they still emotionally and sometimes monetarily invest in these tributes. And then in the first half of Act 2, Suzanne Collins does deliver on the title and the entire premise of the Hunger Games by kind of having that really bloody brawl at the cornucopia. And then it has Katniss Everdeen struggling to survive. And if you're still confused and you can't figure out the premise of your book, I would highly suggest you step back from it for maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then get back on your computer and write a 200-word synopsis for your book. Your synopsis should hit upon most of the beats from Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and if you're curious what that is, should be the setup, the catalyst, the break into two, mention the fun and games a bit, the midpoint turn should be hinted at least, and then kind of give like a 2-3 sentence summary for your ending. You don't have to know your ending, but just throw something out there on the page. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you're not quite at Act 2, you should be nearing Act 2 pretty soon. Act 2 usually starts around the 20 to 25% mark in the book. I hope this video was a lot of help. I hope that it really helped you get through the muddled, messy middle that everyone struggles with. I have a few more AuthorTube videos, and I'll link them down in the description, that discuss Act 2 a little bit more and a little different, and in different kind of ways. I created those videos when I was writing my act 2 and I was struggle bussing through it. So those videos are kind of telling you what worked for me, what helped me. Thank you all so much for subscribing and liking my videos. It means a lot to me, and I hope to see you in the next one. The next one's gonna be this Sunday. But I look forward to seeing you this Sunday, and as always, let's get writing. Bye! I brought my camera back and it was really zoomed in. Hi. That's not. Yeah, it's not. There we go.